Good evening and welcome to the 22nd of March 21 meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee. My name is Councillor Giawan and I'm Chairman of the Audit and Standards Committee. This meeting is being held remotely and is being live streamed via YouTube, and the recording of it will be available afterwards on our website. Councillors and officers are reminded to put their mobile phones on silent if they have one near them. Councillors, please mute your microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce the feedback and background noise and save on bandwidth to prevent loss of connection. If you're a member of the committee, please leave your camera on. I will first do a roll call to check all members who are expected to attend are present. So as I say your name, please turn on your microphone and confirm you are connected. Councillor Barnes.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Barnes.
Present.
Councillor Harmer.
Present and connected.
Councillor Mrs. Kirby-Green. Councillor Mrs. Kirby-Green. Councillor Madeley.
Present.
Councillor Norton.
Present.
And Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas. No. Okay, we move on to our independent persons. Mrs. Rose Durbin.
Present.
Thank you. Mrs. Jan Gray.
Present.
Thank you. And our parish and town councillor representatives, Councillor Mrs. Mears. Oh, you're on mute, Wendy, but I can see you. That's fine. I can see Wendy is connected. Councillor Smedley. Councillor Smedley. No. Okay, and then our officers joining us today, we have Robin Venard, Assistant Director Resources, Gary Angel, Audit Manager, Tony Baden, Finance Manager, Lisa Cooper, Democratic Services Manager and Monitoring Officer, Graham McCallum, IT Manager, Trevor Greenlee from Grant Thornton, Darren Wells from Grant Thornton. The Democratic Services Officer and Committee Clerk today is Julie Hollins. Members of the committee will be making the decisions today by a named vote. Julie will call out each member in turn and they will either answer for, against, abstain. So at this point, members, please just remember to turn your microphone on again. Those members who wish to speak, please indicate your surname in the chat. Please be aware that there can be a time delay of around 5 seconds whilst a member appears on screen. So each item will be reintroduced as we get to it. So starting off with agenda item 1. So to resolve that the minutes of the last meeting be confirmed as a correct record of the proceedings and will be signed by chairman at a later date. Is everyone in agreement with that, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Julie?
We have apologies from independent person Susan Fellows.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, additional agenda items. Julie, do we have any additional items today?
No, there's none. Lovely.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, so disclosures of interest. Members, please speak clearly if you have a personal and prejudicial interest and say the agenda item it refers to. But if we have any now, please let me know. No, lovely. Thank you very much. OK, so we move on to part A, which is our standards report, agenda item number 5, which is the code of conduct. And if I could hand over to Lisa Cooper to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everybody hear me OK?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Members, as you will recall, this council responded to the Local Government Association's consultation on a new model code of conduct last year. The new code was published just before Christmas and is attached as Appendix A to the report. Whilst it is acknowledged that the new code is clearer and more user-friendly than our own code, the feeling across the other East Sussex councils is that we should retain our existing code at this time, which is common to all East Sussex authorities, including East Sussex County Council, for several reasons. Firstly, retaining our existing code will maintain a level of consistency across these Sussex authorities, which is helpful to the dual-hatted members, of which there are a few. And with these Sussex County Council elections in 7 weeks' time, there could potentially be some more. It is also helpful for me in terms of being able to raise issues regarding the application of the code with my counterparts when appropriate. Secondly, the government has yet to respond to the Committee on Standards in Public Life's recommendations following their review of ethical standards, and it is hoped that when the government does respond, this would result in changes to legislation and therefore changes to the standards regime. Any new code that we might have adopted prior to then would therefore need to be amended at that point. That's set out at paragraph 7 of the report. So with the prospect of retaining our existing code in line with other East Sussex authorities, I did conduct a review of our code against the East Sussex Code and found a number of minor differences. Excuse me, these are highlighted at paragraph 10 of the report and appendices B and C. So it's therefore recommended that our current code be amended as set out to bring us in line more with the East Sussex Code. So the recommendations before you on this matter is to retain our existing code at this time to maintain consistency whilst agreeing a few minor amends, and that this council's position and the Code of Conduct be reviewed when the government responds to the Committee on Standards in Public Life's recommendations. And this position has been endorsed by our current 3 IP members. But happy to take any comments or questions, Chair.
Thank you very much for all your work on that, Lisa. We have a question from Councillor John Barnes, please.
It's not a question, it's a comment on the LGA code. It may be clearer, but I hate this egocentric nonsense of I all the way through it. So I'm rather glad that we're recommending that we retain our present code. I think it is actually quite helpful if we have the same code across both county and district and across all districts. And I therefore strongly support what's being proposed at the moment. I move the amendments if it helps you, Chairman.
Thank you very much appreciated. If I could have a seconder, please. Oh, Wendy.
Second.
I think, Wendy, have you got a question, but you're on mute?
Need to press your microphone symbol.
We'll just give Wendy a second. I just would value her contribution before we move on, please.
Muted. It's not mine. It's not.
Oh,
So,
I think we
I don't know.
can hear you, Wendy.
Can you?
Yes, that's it.
Can you?
You're
It just
live.
keeps going off. My clock doesn't know why it's not working.
That's
but
okay.
Anyway,
You're live.
I am sorry. Yes, I was just agreeing wholeheartedly with John's comments, and I thoroughly agree that at the moment we should be keeping in line with the present code, and that at some point there's going to be a new code, and then we shall look into it again. So, and I also like to say the amount of work Lisa's done on this, it's quite vast. Anyway, thank you. I'm in agreement.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
With the
Okay,
proposal.
so we've had a proposer from Councillor Barnes and seconded by Councillor Harmer. Julie, if you could do a name vote, please.
Okay, members, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
For as amended.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
For as amended.
Councillor Harmer.
For as amended.
Councillor Giwan.
4 as amended.
Councillor Madeley
4 as amended.
and Councillor Norton.
4 as amended.
That's carried, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, and then if we move on to agenda item number 6, so this is our independent persons recruitment, and if I can hand over again to Lisa to introduce the report, please.
Chair, can I just apologise for joining the meeting late? My apologies for lateness.
No
See you
problem
in
at
the
all.
other
Welcome,
committee
Councillor
members.
Thomas.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, Lisa, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So agenda item 6, as members are aware, it was agreed at our last meeting in December to recruit an additional IP to replace 2 existing IPs whose term of office expires in July, namely Susan Fellows and Jan Gray. So the council advertised the vacancy in January, and as at the closing date, we had received 9 applications, 2 of which had applied in 2019. Due to there being only 1 vacancy, it was agreed with the chairman to shortlist down to just 4 candidates, plus 2 2019 candidates. So following the interviews, which was conducted by the chairman, the chief executive and myself remotely over MS Teams, which was an experience, we are pleased to recommend that Robert Brown be appointed as an independent person in respect of standards matters with effect from the 10th of July. The calibre of all the applicants was high, and it was difficult to both shortlist and appoint following the interviews. From July, the council will then be back down. Well, we'll have 2 IPs and not 3 as current. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Yeah, I just wanted to say it was a very high standard of applicants that we interviewed on those days for the position, and I'd just like to thank everybody that did express an interest in the role. So thank you. If I could have a proposer and a seconder, please.
I propose.
Thank you, Councillor Madeley, proposing, and a seconder.
I second. Second.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. Okay, Julie, over to you for a roll call.
Okay, members, again, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
4.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
4.
Councillor Harmer.
4.
Councillor Giawan.
4.
Councillor Madeley.
4.
Councillor Norton.
4.
And Councillor Thomas.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes our standards element of the meeting. If anyone would like to leave at this point, you are welcome to from the standards perspective, and you're able to continue watching us on YouTube if you like. But thank you very much for your contribution this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, brilliant. So now we can move on to part B, which is our audit section of the meeting. So first one is agenda item number 7, audit progress report and sector update from Grant Thornton. So if I can hand over to, I believe it will be Trevor Greenlee to introduce the report, please.
Surely, have we done agenda item? Oh, no, okay. Sorry, looking at the wrong thing.
No problem.
Hello, Chair. It's Darren Wells, and I'm.
Oh, hello, Darren.
Hello
Thank
there.
you.
I'll be presenting the report
Thank
tonight.
you.
So the report before you serves 2 purposes. One, to give an update on the progress of the 1920 audit and to highlight where we are for the 2021 audit. We also report to you the outcome of the audit of the housing benefit subsidy claim for 1920. And then the second main aspect is just to update you or provide for your information key developments within the local government sector. So just turning to the first of those for the 1920 audit of financial statements, members may recall that we presented the audit findings to you to your December meeting, and you had a discussion about the audit finding of two assets that we identified that had been understated and that management weren't intending to adjust for them because they were not material. Subsequent to our report to you, the council identified through remeasurement of two other assets that were valued on a similar basis to the two that we identified, that the asset valuations for those were also incorrect. And this was the Bexhill Town Hall and the Treasurer's offices. Given that with those two errors plus the two we had originally reported to you, the misstatement was material, management agreed to amend the 1920 accounts. What we then had to consider was whether the cause of the error for 1920 also applied for 1819, and it was confirmed that it did. Unfortunately, the council's records didn't allow the impact of those errors to be adjusted for because it was a different valuer that was involved in 1819. So officers have approached the district valuer to get the additional information which would allow the impact in 1819 to be calculated. At the time we wrote this report, we were still waiting for that information, and I believe it's been received today, and officers are currently looking at that, and then that will be passed to us to consider. So that's the principal reason that the audit for 1920 is not yet completed. Alongside that, we've just got a few bits and pieces from our side that we just need to complete. For example, when we reported to you in December, we hadn't quite completed work on journals. So there is a little bit more work to do to complete the 1920 audit. On the housing benefits, that work was completed satisfactory. There was one error that we identified that required additional testing, but we submitted the housing benefit grant claim and the subsequent report to the Department for Works and Pensions. For 2021, we will begin the audit planning for that in earnest over the next couple of weeks as soon as we've completed the 1920 audit. There were two other things I wanted to bring to your attention. One, we may have mentioned this to you before, and that's there's a new code of audit practice that takes effect from the 1st of April 2020. What that does is that it expands the value for money work that auditors have to consider. It removes the old approach of a binary qualified or unqualified opinion, which caused us to focus just where we felt there was a potential risk of giving the wrong opinion. The new approach requires us to document and understand your arrangements against new criteria and then undertake detailed work where we believe there might be a risk of significant weaknesses. And we'll say a little bit more about that when we present the audit plan to you for 2021. And then the final bit I wanted to highlight on the sector update is that we just share with you for summary the outcome of the Redmond review, which was a review into financial reporting amongst local authorities and also the sustainability of the local audit market. And we set out there the main findings of that review and the status or how some of those findings are being taken forward by the respective parties. That's all I was planning to say, Chair. Happy to pick up any questions that members may have.
Great, thank you very much for the update, Darren. And just for the benefit of the recording, Councillor Mrs Kirby-Green has now been able to join us. Welcome, Councillor Kirby-Green. Do we have any questions? Nothing. Oh,
Chairman, I just wanted to say a little on the Redmond report, and we are moving to a quite difficult era, it seems to me, where there is a range of authorities in the public sector, the old distinction between private and public always meant, it seemed to me, that the public sector tended to be over-audited by private sector standards. But what we now have, of course, is a great many authorities like us are actually moving either to establish a housing company or indeed to invest in property. And that clearly requires somewhat different auditing from the past. I'm just wondering how much Grant Thornton are taking account of that in the work they're going to do in future.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Yes, we would. The whole approach to the risk assessment before we produce an audit plan is to understand key developments at the council and the risks that may pose from both a financial reporting perspective, but also a value for money perspective. So you can be, members can be assured, and you would see that reflected, that we would acknowledge those key developments and also record the potential impact on the audit. So yes, we would pick those matters up.
Great, thank you very much, Darren. We don't appear to have any further questions, so if I could have a proposer and a seconder for this report, please.
Proposed, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. And a seconder.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay, so as this is a report for noting, there is no need for a named vote. So thank you very much. So if we could now move on to agenda item 8. So this is our ICT continuity plan presentation. And if I could please hand over to Graham.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to try and share my screen now so you can see the presentation. Okay, hopefully you can all see that.
Yes.
Lovely. Hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Graham McCallum, IT manager. My job includes managing the infrastructure and service desk for Rother, and also I'm the data protection officer responsible for data governance. This presentation will hopefully give you an idea as to how I approach managing Rother's software to ensure that as an organisation we protect our members and staff, and of course our customers, the public. I want to provide assurance that we're not ignoring the audit requirements around controls that are outstanding. In order to provide context, and also because I hope you'll find it useful, I'm going to cover my IT strategy for 2021 using the following headlines: the staff and member support, security, and dynamic IT. I hope to introduce you to the various factors that drive IT decision, which include security, business enablement, and cost saving. Member and staff support. Focusing on those elements, the security, business enablement, and cost saving, within member and staff support, efficiencies can be made by implementing and bolstering existing technologies, including self-help. Training is fundamental in helping deliver these new ways of working, helping us to drive down the costs and to free up existing resources. security is critical to maintaining our services. For example, Hackney, Copeland and Redcar are recent examples of the level of damage that councils have sustained due to security breaches. In the case of Copeland, a council of similar size to our own with a 9 million turnover, the bill for recovery so far has exceeded 2 million. For Redcar, it's now close to 18 million. We take these risks very seriously. We're working towards Cyber Essentials Plus, that is replacing the PSN, the Public Service Network, our connection to central government and other entities such as the Department for Work and Pensions. It's important that regular penetration tests are conducted. However, a balance needs to be struck between current workload against those known targets that are set in remedial work. Active Directory assembles all policies regarding access and security on our network, and it is important that this environment is maintained and configured correctly in line with current guidance and industry standards. LME, or Logging Made Easy, which has been implemented, is an example of how we have followed the guidance from the NCSE, the National Cyber Security Centre, and MHCLG, the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. When maintaining and administering our IT network, policies are required in line with best working practices from both the industry and central government via both the NCSE and MHCLG. The business continuity policy and IT security policy are no longer suitable documents and are not usable in the real world. And it is important to note that we have a good record of what's actually happening on the ground, including our firewall rule set and network documentation. Covering off architecture includes the firewall redesign and projects such as the Nutanix Flow, which is firewalling for our server environment, our virtual private reconfiguration, which is work ongoing, the removal of our walled garden and other intrusion and prevention detection systems. Dynamic IT is a title that I hope conveys my approach of how IT supports the business, how we try to respond to the changes that Rother face both internally, for example, through revenue generation and cost saving, and externally, for example, obviously the pandemic. IT is a support service. It is in general having to support change on a scale that hasn't been seen before. We have to be flexible, but within sensible bounds, and we have to make the most of our limited resources that we have at our disposal, and we have to be honest and pragmatic. We want to avoid being trapped by outdated processes and remain a business enabler. The next slides outline how we intend to do this. With our server room migration, we currently have 2 server rooms in the town hall. We hope to consolidate in preparation for any town hall reorganisation. This includes focusing on the power supply and air conditioning and fire suppression, all major services that exist to make sure that that environment runs correctly. Our WAN expansion, our wide area network expansion. This is how the town hall connects to the outside world, and it is critical to providing sustained service delivery from the Bexhill location, including maintaining connectivity from elsewhere, for example, from home. And in the future, we will be proposing a case for business grade connectivity for home workers. Connectivity is crucial for Rother to stay dynamic in these uncertain times and underpins our cloud strategy. The consolidation of our firewalls demonstrates how we're able to save costs at the same time as maintaining a robust business continuity whilst keeping Rother current within the industry standard protection. This is to highlight that our decision making follows a secure and mindful route to ensure that technology doesn't stagnate. Our cloud strategy. There are lots of benefits of moving to the cloud, money saving being one of them. It enables us to work smarter and collaborate across councils and with our customers. It provides a better and more secure user experience because cloud vendors continuously fix vulnerabilities and improve their products, as well as offering real-time monitoring. It gives us access to marketplace security tools, and it avoids us being fixed with inflexible network specifications that restrict users' needs. It also avoids us being locked into long-term contracts. Again, an example of where we're driving costs down but ensuring that we stay dynamic and responsive to business needs and increasing our resilience to external risk is our integrated telephony. This will be achieved by migrating away from our current telephony provider and focusing on a better contact center integration, which will fully utilize our Microsoft Teams licensing. We strongly recognise the need for usable and useful policy documentation, and I wanted to finish by stating that we've met with our insurer Zurich, who are assisting with the completion of not only the policies that are outstanding, but also from a wider business perspective. This is scheduled to be completed by September this year. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found this presentation useful. If you have any questions, I welcome them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Graham. I think it just hopefully demonstrates, certainly to me, and hopefully demonstrates to other members, the kind of technical underpinning that sits behind a lot of the work that's not always visible. So thank you for sharing some of that with us. We have a question from Councillor Mary Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. My goodness, what high-powered technology we are going to have. What on earth is a walled garden? But my point really is that we live in an area where broadband is absolutely awful. And as Councillor Kirby Green has obviously illustrated this evening, getting in online isn't easy if you're in the rural area, and there are hills and dales and what have you between where you are and where we are. I mean, we are 19 miles away from Bexhill Town Hall. What hope is there that all this technology is actually going to afford us absolutely glitch-free meetings when broadband really is so variable?
That's a very good question. I don't believe a glitch-free environment is ever going to exist for everybody. I do believe, however, it's going to improve. I know that Openreach very recently, Openreach is the BT's arm for delivering fibre connectivity to the premise, which we don't really have anywhere in the southeast. They Ofcom have removed any sort of fee capping, so this is going to open the door for fibre to the premise delivery. I also know that there are various areas in and around rather that are being provided by that service. What this means is you're going to get a much more reliable broadband connection to the internet from your home. And as I alluded to, I mentioned we will be putting a proposal that hopefully, obviously for your consideration, it will enable us to have a business grade broadband delivery for our home workers to ensure that connection can happen in a way that the delivery and the failure of home broadband. I need to probably say though, to be open and honest about things, it's quite incredible how providers have maintained broadband during the pandemic. Rather are not alone in turning their infrastructure inside out and pushing home working to the fore. So to my mind, the way that Virgin and BT and all the other different ISPs have coped with that tremendous change is quite remarkable. But I hope we can capitalise on their investment, by investing ourselves and providing a business grade connection, which will hopefully answer your question in terms of improving connectivity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor John Barnes, please.
Yes, I'm a bit tired at this game, but I was slightly surprised that we're not on cloud already. And I wondered what the timescale is for actually migrating to cloud if we're not there.
Okay, that's probably my fault for not highlighting it a bit more. It was difficult to pitch because we're actually already on the cloud in in different forms. So we have the definition of cloud is basically a computer that is not really in the town hall from our perspective. So for example, our email through Microsoft 365 is a hybrid cloud. So our data and access to mailboxes is in the cloud, but our management of those mailboxes is still in the town hall, hence the hybrid approach. We have many other systems that are currently in the cloud. It was really to highlight that we have a cloud strategy, that we put cloud as an important part of where we're going with IT and where we wish to push all of our services, which gives us cost saving across the board, including our staff investment too.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Thomas, please.
Can I first say that although I'm not a Luddite, I'm not a complete Luddite, that is to say, I must confess there were certain points where I simply didn't understand the language that you were using or to what you were referring. That's just for future reference. I suspect I may not be alone in that. But what I really want, a couple of questions I wanted to ask. I got the general idea that what you're doing helps the smooth running of the council, helps the efficiency of the council, and helps the security. So my first question is, if we manage to transfer all the actual data kept by the council onto the cloud, would that solve the security issue? Because presumably the providers of these cloud facilities have a vested interest in providing an entirely secure service. So that's my first question. The second question is a more humdrum one about how what you're doing in IT actually works with improving the practical efficiency of the council and how it actually improves the services we offer to the residents. So those are two questions. So I'll leave those with you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so to answer your first question, security is constantly changing. So, and this is one of the issues that we have to focus on the documentation. It's very difficult to maintain a useful document that says we are going to do this when XYZ happens, because our environment is constantly changing, constantly shifting. So what the cloud offers us is the vendors take on board the levels of security and the software updates, which will help us obviously tremendously when we shift across. I don't think we certainly wouldn't be resting on laurels with this. So security is very much a moving target, and you need to make sure that you've got a robust policy in place, which we do, and I think it needs to reflect those business needs very accurately, and that's certainly something we're going to be working on with our insurance company. I wouldn't like to say that it's not going to solve our problems. I think we're in a good, healthy place already, and really my presentation was I was hoping would sort of give you confidence that we know what we're doing and our journey is the right one. To answer your second question, I think for IT to work, IT in itself it's a tool. So it's important that we've got good communications with the business. It's important that we understand exactly where the business is going or wants to go, and we have those links into the business. We have good support from management. We understand clearly where we want to go and where the business needs to go. And I think in terms of cost saving, for example, Teams, our ability to turn our infrastructure to support home working. Without IT facilitating that process, this meeting itself couldn't happen. And it's also a good example of how, in a pandemic, in what is effectively a disaster from a business continuity perspective, I don't think IT has really missed a beat in that, and that's all credit to my teams. Yeah, so it really, I think the message here is to move forward and be dynamic and use our IT environments that we have with a mind to where we've been and where we're going, focusing on cloud and making sure that we don't stagnate, really. I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does in a way, and in a way it doesn't. I mean, with the first question, I'm not clear whether or not once you back things up on the cloud, whether you can lose it. I mean, when I write a document these days, I save it to the cloud, and I discover that however many wrong buttons I may press, I can always recover the document by going to the cloud. So I'm just wondering whether, you know, is that the case for the higher level data, which Rother Council keeps? If we did have one of these cyber attacks that you're talking about, which were so expensive and calamitous to other authorities, if we had all the material on the cloud, would we be able to easily and inexpensively recover it? That's the straightforward version of my question.
So we have backup. I mean, we can discuss backups. That's not an issue. We have an immutable backup policy. So we don't just have one backup. We have about 4, and they work at different levels of our data. So not only do we have magnetic media, so a spinning hard disk with data on, but we also have it in a tape form, which is completely offline. So we don't just back up our data in our data centers or in the cloud. It's the whole environment that we're backing up, and we're backing up across different platforms, which gives us different levels of assurance. We can recover from tape going back in time at a complete loss, which is something that the Copeland example I gave, they're a very similar council size to us, and unfortunately when they were hit with their ransomware, the attackers were in for at least 6 months, and they actually wiped their backups out on purpose. That will be impossible for that to happen in the same scenario for us, purely because we have tape backup offsite, which they did not have. We also have cloud backup, so as well as internally backing up and the tape backup, we also have the cloud backup. So all of our backups are then replicated to the cloud. We also, on top of that, belts and braces, we have cloud backup off-site. So that's a different cloud, not the same public cloud as Azure, and it's off-site. We've got various copies of our data. I think that's really the message I'd like to push there.
Can I just say thank you very much? That very comprehensive answer. That did answer my question totally. It gave me the assurance I was looking for, that our data is completely safe and that we've got marvelous systems in place. With the second question, I'd like a little bit more detail, if you could give it, on what is the relationship between the way in which the council as a whole is changing its way of working and the relationship of the IT department to that. I would be grateful if you could provide a little bit more detail on how the IT department fits into the general agenda of transformation within the council, please.
Certainly. So the way that the council's working at the moment, obviously with the change with the pandemic, with our it's such a ginormous change from how we were working a year ago. A year ago we were town hall centric, so you could you have an office, you have a computer, you would be very static within the town hall, and we would have very limited external access. And there were various reasons for that. We still had a cloud strategy back then, so we were still looking at getting the gains from that cloud gives us, but it was still very much town hall centric. Forwarding a year, we've now got a completely different scenario where almost all of our staff are working from home, this change in working has made us realise faster the strategy that we had in place. So we were already working towards what's really called a zero trust environment, which is we don't trust anything in terms of the connection in or the connection out in that case. And I think Robin wants to interject. Do you want to jump in, Robin?
Sorry, it was only at an opportune moment. It is really just to say that Graham and his team, they look after the environment where everyone's systems sit on or sit within and use. So in terms of that future development and transformation, Graham's team are integral to that. But clearly the services and the systems that they use bespoke to their own particular services where you'll see improvements and development. So it's all double covered in terms of Graham needs to make sure the environment is safe and secure and able to deliver, but the services are very much charged with making the best use of the systems and the software that they have and use for their service areas. So I just wanted to clarify that there's two parts to that question.
Thank you very much, Robin. That's very helpful. It's between so basically what Graham is in charge of is the internal operation of the systems rather than how it relates to other aspects of council provision. Is that right?
It's definitely a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
I did want to actually add, obviously it's difficult at the moment given the current situation, but we very much have an open door policy. If when restrictions allow, it would be lovely to have members, if they wish, to come into the town hall and see what we're actually doing. Sometimes it's easier to visualize the situation, particularly the route forward, when you can actually see what we're talking about, and it's a bit more hands-on that way. And it would give a perspective of our current way of working and what we're dealing with. So yeah, I just wanted to underline the fact that that's perfectly possible, and I would welcome at any point any sort of questions that you have that we can come in and discuss that way.
Thank you very much for that invitation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, Graham. We do love a tour, so I'm sure we'll be taking you up on that.
Good.
Got a couple more questions. So if I could pass over to Councillor Mrs. Kirby-Green.
Thanks, Chairman. It wasn't a question. I just really wanted to put on record. I feel that IT, we've sort of patted ourselves on the back an awful lot throughout this pandemic. I feel that IT is a back office function that people don't see. And I think when things go wrong, everyone is aware of what's going wrong with IT. But when things go right, we just accept that's fine. And I feel that sometimes we just take it for granted. And I think that the step change that has happened over the last year, we're all doing everything online, all the staff, all the councillors. And I would just like to put on record that certainly my thanks to the IT team, who have really stepped up and delivered a really smooth transition to the way that we're working now. So thanks, Graham, and thank you very much to all of your team.
Thank you very much, Councillor. It's absolutely a team effort, and we are blessed with a great team, so I'll definitely pass that on.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Councillor Harmer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'll echo Councillor Kirby-Green's sentiments. A lot of this is gobbledygook to me, but I completely and utterly appreciate and thank you sincerely, you and your team, Graham, in keeping us connected in these crazy times. It really is appreciated. I'm sure I couldn't even begin to understand what you do, but it is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for everyone's comments, and Graham for the presentation. If I could just have I don't think I need a proposer for this presentation, do I? No, wouldn't have thought so. No, that's fine. So lovely. Thank you very much for your time, Graham. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So now if we can move on to agenda item number 9, so our internal audit report to 31st of December 2020. And if I can hand over to Gary to introduce the report, please.
Good evening all, it's Gary Angel here. It's my first report. It's my usual quarterly report to members on It covers two things really. It covers the internal audit activity to the third quarter of 2020-21 and a progress update on the implementation of outstanding audit recommendations. First is summary of the activity. We issued 4 reports in the third quarter of 2020-21. The executive summaries as usual are in the Appendix A, which starts on page 49 onwards. The reports were the Joint Waste Central Admin, the second of the Joint Waste Contract Central Admin audits, the main accounting audit, the Treasury Management audit and the creditors audit. All the reports provided for good or substantial assurance on the overall governance arrangements, meaning that there were no areas of significant concern were found. On the implementation of audit recommendations, as you know, every quarter I chase up the heads of service on any outstanding audit recommendations from the previous quarters. The results of this are summarised in the tables on Appendix B on page 55. At the top table, you'll see the progress remains slow on the older year recommendations. 13 recommendations are yet to be implemented, including 5 of the long outstanding recommendations which are reported to this committee before. The Chief Executive is aware of this situation and is working with the relevant heads of service to ensure that the remaining recommendations are resolved as soon as possible. The bottom table at the bottom shows all the recommendations made in the first 6 months of the current financial year. There are fewer than normal because of many audits were limited in the scope due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All current year recommendations have since been implemented since they're issued. That's about all I can say on the report, really. I'm happy to take questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We don't have any questions at the moment.
Chairman.
Yes, Councillor John.
I don't know how you want to handle this. I wanted to just look at the Treasury Management audit, but obviously there are a couple ahead of that.
Okay. Do we want to save the questions then for the Treasury Management update when we get to it, or?
When I looked at the audit on Treasury Management, I was rather struck by the fact that on policy and procedures, we only had a partial assurance. And that seemed to me rather odd on something which is quite as crucial to the financial future of this council. I could understand why there was partial assurance on some of the other aspects, but I would have thought on policy and procedure, we ought by now to be watertight. I just wonder what partial meant in that context, therefore.
Sure.
Yes, I think it's just on the loans, because there's sort of 2 sides of Treasury Management, as you would appreciate. There's the investment side and loans were are borrowing. I think it was only on the loan side where we've so there aren't any up-to-date loan procedures for the loans side, and I think they've Tony and his team have started writing something out, but at the time of the audit they weren't in place, so I think that's probably why it's partial from memory. I mean, we haven't got any major concerns with Treasury Management. These are just procedural things that need to be sorted, you know.
If it's procedural, I'm less worried than if it were on the policy side. But I thought it was much more watertight than that left an impression. And you're quite right on investments, but we are watertight.
Yeah, sorry, can I also answer, Councillor? I mean, it's,
yes, please.
When I say procedural, I don't mean that they haven't got procedures. I mean that they're not documented. The procedures seem to be working reasonably well. It's just that they're not documented, so anyone else.
I think Tony's going to interject here.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to sound out what Gary's just said. We have got procedures and policies in place. I mean, in terms of actually taking out new loans, well, we actually haven't taken any out for quite a long time now anyway. And it's a case of really bringing them together into sort of a digest, if you like, so that they can be easily accessed in one place. And it doesn't also hurt to update those policies and procedures and review them every now and then. It's very low level detail stuff. It's very important stuff. I don't mean to underestimate the importance. It needs to happen, but if I can give Councillor Barnes and the rest of the committee that assurance, we are very tight, very careful. As I say, when we place out investments and taking in new loans. I will cover a little bit more on that in the Treasury Management Update Report on item 12.
Lovely, thank you very much, Robin.
To confirm, I think we've managed to sort the backup for the systems administrator for the online banking system as well. So as far as I'm concerned, everything is up to date as it should be. And as Tony said, I think it's a case of that our policies are all in place, as members will have already approved. Our treasury management strategy and investment borrowing strategy ties in with our capital programme and our investments around there as well. So that is all in place. It is more the if you like, the detailed documentation of things that Gary's looking for to see. So that'll all be sorted soon as well. So thank you, Chairman.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
My question was very similar to Councillor Barnes. It relates to also to page 51 and the policy and procedures, where you've got the council has an approved strategy for external borrowing and borrowing levels are related to the council's needs, and that's got a P. Can I have an assurance that in fact there is an approved strategy and the borrowing levels are related to the council's needs? So an assurance that the actual, what is under examination, that those criteria have been met. And my question is, what exactly is it that is missing? What is it? And actually precisely what is it that makes that a P rather than something else? Please.
Sorry, which one were we referring to in the investments, are we?
Page 51, under loans, policy and procedures, and that has a P. So I suppose I'm wanting an assurance, firstly, that the criteria are met and that there is an approved strategy for external borrowing, A, and B, the borrowing levels are indeed related to the council's needs. So those two things, an assurance that those two statements are true. My question related to that is, in what way, what precisely is it that's missing, whereby it only gets a P, please?
They weren't the procedures weren't documented. That's what was missing.
So none of the procedures. Some of the procedures.
There was no. There's no. I don't think any of them were documented originally. No, I think they may have changed since we issued the report.
Because Tony, did you want to jump in?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To answer the first bit of Councillor Thomas's question, the strategy has been approved, as Audit Committee approved it last February, and the borrowing limits were approved back in, I think it was by Cabinet in November 2020. So that has all been approved. In terms of the procedure notes, I say we do have procedure notes, but we do need to put them in a better order, if you like. I would say they're more user manuals rather than that might be a better way of describing it. We don't have an issue with this at the moment because we have a very low turnover of staff. I think the issue that's come out in the audit report is that what would happen if, you should always have procedure manuals, if you like, for when you have a changeover of staff is particularly important. So that's probably the bit that we're lacking on. We have updated some of our notes, but it's not complete work yet, and we're looking to update that. I think I said to Gary we'd be looking to complete and update those by the end of April this year.
I'm just thinking, surely that should be an extremely high priority, because the security of the council's financial position is absolutely key, isn't it, to how the council is functioning. So I think it's a little bit worrying that something as actually central to what the council does has not been fully documented, just to register that particular feeling.
Just to add to that, Chairman, we're about to go into a period of much higher borrowing. I can understand that when we weren't borrowing at all, that these things may have drifted slightly. But we do need, it's really about business continuity, I think, as Tony Biden has said, because if, and in COVID, you could easily have lost key members of staff, and then you would be in real problems.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so if I could have a proposer for the report, please. Oh, Tony, do you want to jump in again quickly before we do that?
Yes,
Thank
if I
you.
may, Chair, just very quickly, so I couldn't type quickly enough. Just picking up on the point that Councillor Barnes has just made, absolutely take that on board. But just to also give members reassurance, it isn't just the responsibility of one person. The treasury management duties are spread across the team, so we have more than one person that can do one particular function. So had we have been, struck by, but in fact we did have illness in the team, and had we been struck by illness in the team, which resulted in long-term absences, we would have been able to manage this, because, as I say, we have more than one person that can do those functions.
Great, thank you. So if I could have a proposer for the report, please.
Propose.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, and a seconder.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Okay, as the report is for noting, we won't need a named vote. Thank you very much. So agenda item 10, our internal audit plan 21-22. Again, over to Gary, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This report explains how the audit plan for the next financial year has been devised and seeks members' approval for its adoption. I've tried to summarise in the report the different stages of producing an audit plan. The main steps are the initial gathering of evidence to produce a plan, the plan itself, and finding the resources required to deliver it. One element of that process is the assurance map, which is mentioned in paragraph 5 onwards. Now, an assurance map, for those who haven't seen this before, it provides us with a visual representation of the various assurance activities carried out both internally and externally. The purpose is to assist our understanding of the assurance received, to evaluate its adequacy, and to highlight any potential gaps in coverage. It obviously makes sense to do this before you produce the audit plan, because if there's anything there's a big gap, that's something we want to cover in the audit plan. The revised assurance map is shown in Appendix A, which is page 62. I just made a few things to note on this. This represents a snapshot in time and shows the position as of February 2021 when I gather the evidence. The assessment scores are based on evidence wherever possible, and I followed the methodology set out in Appendix B. None of the areas assessed came out as high risk on this occasion, and all the areas flagged as medium risk will be covered in one form or another by the work included in the audit plan. Right, then on to the plan itself, the audit plan and resources, which is paragraph 13 onwards. We're now about to commence the third year of the 3-year strategic audit plan reported to members in March 2019. However, a few things have happened since then, and the original work plan has had to be amended to take into account several factors. These are the audit work postponed in 2020-21, for starters, the fact that some parts of the council are still heavily impacted by the pandemic, the need to avoid over-auditing these managers that have been affected by the backlog, because we may have more audits than usual due to be done in that area. And finally, the priority areas highlighted by the revised assurance map and the results of my recent risk assessment exercise. So I have to try and juggle all those factors and get them all in the plan. The plan is in 2 parts. The plan itself is in Appendix C on pages 67 and 68, and the resources for that plan are shown in Appendix D on page 69. The key points to note on this one are the plan presented here has been prepared in consultation with the Chief Executive and heads of service, and is supported by the corporate management team. It allows for 534 days of audit work across 23 separate audit areas and consulted activities. The Governance audits are carried out every year, as significant failures in these areas could have a negative impact on the control environment, but would also potentially impact the external auditor's overall opinion of the council's financial accounts. And finally, we would ordinarily aim to cover all high and medium risk areas over a 3-year period. However, some audits will now have to take place over a slightly longer time frame because of the backlog of work caused by the pandemic. So in summary, I've tried my best to come up with a plan that provides good audit coverage and is deliverable. However, it may be necessary to substitute some audits for other work during the year if it subsequently transpires that they cannot proceed for whatever reason. That's really all I was going to say on this report. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Gary. Question from Councillor John Barnes, please.
Yes, can I thank Gary for what is an extremely helpful document, very thorough, and on the whole, I think there are very few questions that I would want to ask. I was left with one slight puzzlement. It's on page 62, and it's a very minor point, but it did seem to me rather odd that when you get to the KPIs column, we've looked at the KPIs around asset management and contract compliance. We've also identified them around housing and around planning. But it seemed to me very odd when we came to property investment and treasury management that we appear not to look at any KPIs at all. Now, I believe that's not the case. In fact, I know it's not the case. So I'm just wondering why they don't own and manage risk and are therefore excluded from that column.
Sure. No, I was going by the KPIs that reported to Cabinet, Councillor. I'm not aware of those other KPIs, so that's why they're not featured in it.
Can I suggest we do have a look at those, because they are rather critical around risk, it seems to me, and they are, I think, quite robust. So probably they ought to be taken into account.
Councillor, I think the problem there is probably I've just picked up on the ones that are reported up to Cabinet, and there might be others that aren't routinely reported out. I think that's probably what's happened there. I'll have to have another look at that for future reference.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so we have no further questions on that one. So this is a recommendation. So if I could first have a proposer for the report, please.
Propose. Second.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes and Councillor Harmer. Okay, Julie, over to you for a named vote call, please.
Okay, members, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against, or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
For.
Councillor Mrs Barnes. For. Councillor Harmer.
For.
Councillor Giwan.
For.
Councillor Mrs Kirby-Green.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Norton.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
Carried, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Julie. Okay, and then if we can now move on to agenda item number 11, review of the internal audit plan 2021, and back over to Gary again. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Right, it's the final report for me tonight. This report sets out the results of an annual self-assessment I carry out of the effectiveness of proper internal audit service, compared with the public sector internal audit standards, which are professional standards we must adhere to. I carried out this review by evaluating our activities against a 40-page checklist. The chairman has had the privilege of seeing the full copy, and I'm happy to share it with anyone else that cares to read it, but it's not an amazing, exciting read, I'm afraid. But the offer's there. A summary of the results are given in Appendix A, which is pages 74 to 78. A tick in the Y column, ticking the Y column indicates compliance with standards. Tick in the P column indicates partial compliance, and You guessed it, in the N column indicates no compliance. Members will note that Rother Internal Audit Services currently meets the vast majority of the standards. In fact, we did meet them all last year. The few new issues that have arisen this year are reported in Appendix B, which is on page 79. However, these are all a direct result of disruption caused by the COVID pandemic, and are easily resolved. In fact, 2 of the action points have already been addressed as part of the audit planning process for 2021-22. So in conclusion, this report demonstrates Rother's internal audit service continues to operate at a high level of effectiveness. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. No questions for you on this one, Gary. Okay, so just a proposer then, please.
Very happy to move, Chairman.
Okay.
Oh, I can second Kirby Green.
Thank you. Okay, so proposed by Councillor Barnes, second by Mrs. Kirby Green. Thank you. Okay, so this again is a recommendation. So Julie, over to you for a roll call.
Okay, members, again, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against, I abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Barnes.
For.
Councillor Harmer.
For.
Councillor Girwan.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Kirby Green.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Norton.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so agenda item number 12, Treasury Management Update. And if I could now hand over to Tony to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, this is the Treasury Management Q3 update for the current financial year. And it's a report that members are requested to just note the update. Again, as we touched on a few moments ago, just to remind members that the Council's investment strategy was approved in February last year in relation to the 2021 financial year. And the strategy requires regular in-year updates to Audit and Standards Committee, on Treasury management performance. So hence the reason for the report in front of members tonight. And this also means that we're compliant with the SIPFA Code of Practice requirements. So that's all good stuff from a credibility point of view, if you like. The report covers 4 main topics, and I'll explain briefly what's in there. I won't go through the report paragraph by paragraph, but I'm happy to take questions. So it covers investments review, borrowing, non-treasury investments, and there's a little bit at the end about the economic outlook. As in general terms rather than specifically Rother Council. So investment reviews, the table in paragraph 9 shows that the investment portfolio at the end of December had a value of about £41 million, of which 33 million was held in call and fixed term accounts, largely with Lloyds Bank, and 8 million in long-term property fund holdings. Interest income from property fund investments is forecasted about £340,000, which is slightly below the original budget of 400,000. And now that budget was set before the pandemic arrived, so it's not really surprising it's below budget, but it is nevertheless a modest improvement on the last update that I gave members back in December. And it has improved by 38,000. So the fund performance is improving, albeit a bit slowly, I guess. But it is going the right way, which is encouraging. Members will note from the table in paragraph 10 that the property fund capital values have also recovered slightly since the last update, which was in line, or is in line with what we felt would happen once the economic recovery commenced. So it does, I think, show that they still represent a good and solid investment for the council. I'd just like to point out one other thing to members, if I may, which isn't in the report, and that's with reference to the £33 million held with Lloyds. Since the 31st of December, we've put a 10 million of that amount out to other counterparties in various interest yielding call accounts with rates ranging from 0.05% to 0.12%. So it's not going to make us rich, unfortunately. They're pretty miserly returns, as we'd expect. but it does reduce the risk of having all our investments with one counterparty, which is an issue I think we've discussed with members before. And I should stress that it's no reflection on the current risk level associated with our bankers, Lloyds Bank, and they are still deemed to be a very low risk institution. And as I say, it does give us a very small return of interest, but as I say, it's not game changing for us, I'm afraid. But I guess a few pounds is better than nothing. If we just bring members' attention now to borrowing, paragraphs 12 to 18 give an update on our borrowing activities during the year. And not surprising, there is an awful lot to update members about. Activity is largely driven by capital programme spend. We know, as we've reported now several times before, that spend has slowed drastically due to the pandemic. So we've not taken out any new borrowing this year. Hopefully that will change next year as the capital programme gathers pace. So, as I say, no new loans. Most of the prudential indicators that members can see in paragraph 17, and unsurprisingly, they're lower than we originally expected them to be, again, as a result of the slowdown in the pandemic. On to non-treasury investments. So there's even less activity to report on that, Chair. It's really a case of as you were. We haven't bought any more properties under, or we haven't bought any more properties under the property investment strategy as at the end of December. And I can just say a little bit about the economic update and outlook. Whilst there hasn't been an awful lot of change since the Q2 update, an awful lot has actually changed in the world in which we live. And there have been several developments at a national level. We're now in a third national lockdown, and we've also got a roadmap out of that lockdown. The vaccination rollout programme is continuing apace and has had a largely positive impact on the financial markets and on the economic forecasts. So that's all good news. The Office for Budget Responsibility have recalibrated their growth forecasts, and I think they've lowered them slightly for this year, but they are still expecting a more rapid recovery over time. Clearly, that all that remains to be seen. The Chancellor's March budget statement, that included some significant near-term announcements in particular. We've got an extension to the business rates relief scheme that we had for the earlier this financial year. That's been extended to the 30th of June, as has the stamp duty holiday. And the furlough scheme has been extended to the 30th of September. However, he also sets out in his recovery plan how this will be partly funded, and that includes measures like freezing income tax thresholds and increasing the corporation tax rate to 25%. And those changes start to kick in from April 2022 and April 2023, respectively. Just, I suppose, one sort of slight, really a downside, but one issue that members need to be aware of is that the PWLB interest rates have risen a shade to just under 2% following the Debt Management Office's announcement a while back to cut rates by a whole percentage point. Well, those rates have started to creep back up again. It's too early to say at the moment whether this will have an impact on the council's budget, because there have to be a lot of other factors at play, including the timing of when we actually incur capital spend. It is not, goes without saying, I hope, that it's a situation that officers are going to be keeping a very close eye on, and we'll update members accordingly as and when we know more. But even having said all of that, borrowing still remains a very attractive option, as rates are still very, very low, and it's well worth going for. So that's it from me, Chair. I'm more than happy to take any questions if I can.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for all of that detail. I think, as we spoke in the brief, I think it was just very encouraging to see that despite the current situation that we're in, that there has been modest gains across the portfolio. Question from Councillor John Barnes, please.
Chairman, a number of things I wanted just to say. While I'm grateful, in fact, that the value of our property investments has actually gone up, the crucial thing there is less its value than the return, and I think we will find the return is good. So that's a good news story. I confess I was somewhat disappointed by paragraph 13 and by the fact we are not actually at the moment acquiring properties. Is this, I mean, are we inhibited by COVID in some way, or is this some degree of caution? The reason why I ask is my anticipation, I'm afraid, is that inflation is beginning to gather a bit of pace, and I think interest rates are going to rise rather faster than I would have hoped. I notice there are a number of deals that are under negotiation at the moment. I would have thought we do need to push and push quite hard with borrowing what we can at the lowest possible interest rates, because I suspect this is going to be not the happiest of scenarios as we move into the months ahead.
Thank you. Robin, did you want to pick that one up, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on the issue regarding paragraph 13, I think what it largely reflects is the delays in what progress on projects, particularly the large capital projects, and therefore that delayed our need to borrow. But as Tony has said, our borrowing rates have actually come down from when we forecast those for those projects, and therefore the actual cost of borrowing is lower than we expected when we originally assessed those as investment opportunities. So I think it's mainly to do with timing of investments starting to get going, because a lot of, if you remember, a lot of what's in our capital program now are more construction projects, not necessarily buying or existing properties. This is more about getting those developments going, getting them delivered on time so that they then start to deliver the income. And I think Ben's team, that's what they're focused on at the moment, is making sure those new developments actually get delivered within a good time so that the council can rely on that income going forward. So it's relating to those big projects. This is why there's been a bit of a delay in those actually coming to actually start on site, if you like, to make sure that we get the income when we need it.
Understood, but we are, of course, buying properties for the homeless. We're trying to get some building projects underway, and we are also buying one or two properties for investment. It's just, I think we need to inject a degree of urgency if we can. If it's impossible, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But if not, I think we need to keep a watchful eye on the interest rate weather.
I think we're very much aware of the need to get progress, and I know particularly in the homelessness area, Joe Powell is looking for additional funding in order to invest in those properties and get those away. So yeah, I think it's all happening. The other thing we can look at as well this year is the timing of borrowing. So if we're sure of an investment happening, particularly before the end of the year, next financial year, that is, that we can lock in the borrowing earlier in the year if we need to secure those lower rates. So that's something we're going to look at this year. Look at the impact on our cash flow as well in terms of supporting and servicing that debt in the interim before it's needed as well. So that's something that the guys are working on at the moment.
Brilliant.
Thank you for that, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so if I could have a proposer for this report, please.
Propose.
Thank you, Councillor Harmer. And a second.
Seconded. Second.
Councillor Norton. Okay, brilliant. So this was a report for noting, so no named vote needed. Thank you very much. Okay, and then we move on to accounting policies 2021, agenda item 13, and that is Tony again to introduce this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Accounting service reports about the Council's accounting policies that we intend to adopt as part of the 2021 accounts. I'm afraid this isn't this is quite a dry subject, so I'll try and make it as interesting as I can. And members are requested to adopt these accounting policies and critical judgments that we've laid out in the report. Policies, they're a set of accounting rules that the council must follow when it's putting its accounts together. And the reason why this is absolutely crucial is that we need to obtain a clean audit opinion. And a clean audit opinion is crucial because it's expected by central government, for example. They'll expect to see our accounts unqualified. It's also important to stakeholders to give them assurances around the data that they're reading. That's members, council taxpayers as well. They require that reassurance that the council's financial performance is actually fairly and accurately represented in the financial statements. Potential suppliers to the council are also interested in these statements. They will also require assurances that we are a safe risk, for want of a better turn of phrase, and that they can use our accounts to establish this fact. And banks and other financial institutions also need assurance that we're financially sound to deal with, and they again would use our financial statements to obtain that assurance. The CITFA Code of Accounting Practice for local authorities hasn't actually changed much for 2021. So all we've done is tweaked some sort of minor changes to the wording throughout. We have updated our critical judgments piece to reflect our interest in Alliance Homes, although that won't have much of an impact in 2021 in financial terms. And I should have pointed out at the beginning, Chair, that the report was written also in consultation with Grant Thornton, and any comments that they have we've incorporated into the report. That's probably as much as I'd like to say on it. There's an appendix that's got a complete breakdown, complete list of what our accounting policies are. Some of them are far more technical in nature than others. I think probably the best thing for me to do is to hand back to you. And if there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tony. No questions at this time. So if I could have a proposer and a seconder for this report, please.
Propose.
Second.
Thank you, John Barnes, Councillor Barnes and Councillor Thomas. Julie, over to you for a roll call, please.
Okay, members, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
For.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
For.
Councillor Harmer.
For.
Councillor Girwan.
For.
Councillor Mrs Kirby-Green.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Norton.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Julie. Okay, now if we can move on to agenda item 14, so risk management, and if I could hand over to Robin to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is like your end of year update in terms of risk management. We did a mid-year one actually in September as well as a result of the COVID pandemic, obviously thinking that things were going to improve. But I thought as far as this report, we would just reflect a little bit on the pandemic, some of those issues obviously we picked up in September, and in particular just those issues what I think require some further work from the authority. One particularly is the one that strikes me most is about sustaining a long-term crisis and our response to a long-term crisis. And I think none of us could have precedented what was going to happen with COVID-19. And I think what we've seen, how the council has responded has been very positive. And we've delivered on a number of avenues, including things like the community hub, business grants, etc. What we didn't perhaps anticipate was the length of time that all this would carry on for. And I think that's something that we need to reflect on, is how we manage staff and services, if you like, as well as members as well. I think in terms of those, if something similar ever happened again. And I think some of our work around business continuity, we need to start to reflect on that as well going forward over the next year. And a big part of that also was supply chains and contractor resilience. And as members will be aware, particularly the two charitable organisations, the Freedom Leisure and the Delaware Pavilion Trust, because they are what they are, their level of financial resilience is perhaps not as good or as strong as it would be a major contractor of the council, such as the waste contractor, for example. So again, in terms of our future reserve strategy, we might want to think about how we deal with that sort of issue in terms of maybe longer term support for organisations where they're delivering services or supporting the council and its aims and objectives, but may not have quite the financial resilience in order to deal with such an event as we've seen over this last year. I've also taken the opportunity to update the corporate risk register, which is at the appendix to the report, and I've added a couple of risks there, one around compliance with legislation, more of a general risk for the authority as we struggle, particularly if you like, in the current environment with the COVID and the limitations on resources, but also going forward, financial pressures on the authority, the likelihood of services struggling to meet all legal requirements, it becomes a greater risk to the authority, and I think that's something we should need to reflect on. Delivery of the corporate plan, there's a new corporate plans out for consultation. Clearly there's a number of objectives and aims within that, things that members wish to see delivered, and I think we ought to reflect on the risks that then delivers for the or creates for the authority in terms of ensuring delivery against that corporate plan. I've also included in Appendix B to the report risk management policy, which is a very simple document, the overarching document for it. I've updated that to reflect the new structure of the authority. I'm also proposing in there that it's been some time since members have seen and reviewed the service-based corporate service-based risk registers, and perhaps members would like to see those over the next year or so in terms of bringing services in front of members so you can understand the more detailed risks, if you like, in relation to those services. It usually builds upon the corporate ones, but obviously more nuanced to individual service areas, and that might be something of interest to members over the next year to take that and to review those. So that's it for me, Chairman, so I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Robin. Councillor John Barnes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Robin's said a lot of things with which I agree in terms of our sustainability as an organisation. At County, of course, we spent quite a lot of time a year or two ago working out really what our minimum budget could and should be. It wasn't just statutory commitments, it was really a minimum level of service, but at which really we ought not to go. And it does worry me slightly that we've no very clear picture of quite where we are in terms of our statutory commitments. We have been squeezed now for nearly 11 years. And we're doing wonders on keeping our income up, but there is a major problem looming, and it's the one I missed in the risk register. I don't know what proportion of our finances comes from business rates, but clearly, although the government is doing some propping up, and very welcome propping up in the coming months, I think the long-term future for that stream of income is pretty dismal. And I suspect too our town centres and indeed our village centres are going to change quite a lot as a result of this pandemic, and that too could have some major effects on our revenue stream. And it seemed to me that is a big risk that it's very hard to quantify. So I can understand why, in a sense, we haven't quite got our minds around it. But I have to say, reading through these risks, it seems to me that one is going to be much bigger than some of the ones that we've actually put in. Finally, I would like to welcome Robin's suggestion we look at the the underlying registers, not merely at the top register, and do this on a systematic basis. I think that will be very instructive. So I think that's a welcome step, Chairman.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so no further questions for you on this one, Robin. So if I could have a proposer and a seconder, please.
Propose.
Thank you, Councillor Harmer.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Madeley. Okay, so as it's a recommendation, across to Julie for a roll call.
Okay, members, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
I think I'm going to abstain on this one.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
Don't understand that. For?
Councillor Harmer.
For.
Councillor Dearwan.
For.
Councillor Mrs Kirby-Green.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Norton.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, and now moving on to agenda item number 15, our audit independent persons recruitment, and once again hand over to Robin for this report.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, likewise with Lisa's report earlier in the evening. We also carried out interviews for the new role of the independent person for the audit side of your meeting tonight. So it was a very good, two very good strong candidates that we interviewed for the role. And we recommend for members to support the appointment of Patrick Farmer. I think you've had his profile circulated to members before tonight. So yeah, a very good candidate, very experienced, a very relevant background from his previous work and roles that he's undertaken, and should be a great asset, I would have thought, to the committee. So thank you, Chairman.
Great, thank you. Yeah, once again, really high standards of candidates. So thank you for everyone that expressed an interest in the first place.
Chairman, can I raise a question? I'm certainly not going to vote against Mr. Farmer, and I rather welcome the experience you all bring. But it did slightly worry me that he has no audit or no traceable audit experience. In a way, I think the purpose of the Redmond Review, when it was recommending independent members, was to strengthen us where we might actually be at our weakest, because very few of us actually are practiced accountants or have audit experience. Now, Mr. Farmer brings a great deal of business and very useful business experience to our deliberations. But I just wondered if, and this is not a personal criticism of him, whether he really quite fitted the bill. I'm sure he was the best candidate on the day.
Chairman, do you want me to pick up?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, I've got a couple of words to say. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just particularly, obviously, Patrick's background with the college in particular and his roles within the college gave him, I think, significant exposure to the audit process and the sort of technical side of public sector audit as well. So, yeah, sorry, Chairman.
No, that's great. Thank you. I was just going to reiterate that.
That's very good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that during the process, we asked some really key competency-based questions to really draw out the level of experience in terms of live situations that they're going to be faced with. I think it's important to note as well that we did a shortlisting process to get to those candidates, but ultimately we were committed to finding the right person for the role, which I'm confident we have done. And had neither of those been appropriate, we would have gone back out to the market. I can assure you on that one. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. So again, if I could have a proposer and a seconder for this particular report.
Happy to propose.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Green, and Councillor Harmer, second. Thank you very much. And over to Julie for a roll call, please.
Members, I'll call your names in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
For.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
For.
Councillor Harmer.
For.
Councillor Dearwan.
For.
Councillor Mrs Kirby-Green.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Norton.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, and then the final agenda item on our list tonight is the work programme. So as you'll see on the listing, there are 2 additional dates proposed for November 21 and January 22. Haven't actually got a date in the diary yet, and we may not need these. These are just provisional markers, just in case Grant Thornton aren't able to meet the deadline. So it's just a little bit of contingency planning. So as long as everyone's happy with that, unless anyone's got any further contributions on the work programme. No. So that is the work programme as is. Well, that concludes our meeting for today. So 2011. Thank you very much, officers, for all of your reports. Thank you very much, members and guests, for your contributions. And thank you for anyone at home that may have been watching. Thank you and good night.